Can we sing happy birthday to you?
Sure.
Is that okay, Mr. Chair? Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday, dear Ron.
Curry Fair.
Happy birthday to you.
Big applause.
I know a lot of people that would murder you for doing that.
He's
So,
threatened before many times.
Again, I would ask that everyone, including Commissioner Boyce, no, I'm just joking. You're first up, Commissioner.
Well, thank you. Let me indulge everybody here as a citizen. Sorry we don't have enough chairs for everyone. I was telling Gary Gardner we'll get a bigger meeting room someday. Everybody comes up and speaks. We're going to ask you to adjust the mic just a little bit. I got one interesting note as Commissioner. First of all, if I may, Mr. Chair, there's probably several people that should be recognized, but I would like to recognize Dennis Comfort, who is the Oregon Coast Regional Director for Oregon State Parks, and we're very lucky to have him. Welcome, Dennis. Thank you very much for being here. What did I miss?
Oh, I said it's not my birthday.
Oh. We might, never mind, no say. So I got one letter from one citizen. I won't give his name, but he gave me a really, can we find this lady a chair? You're okay?
Right in front, right
okay.
there.
No, I'm fine.
I just embarrassed you, didn't I? I'm sorry. So one citizen gave me a real chuckle, and it was, I retired, I'm going to read word for word, of course I won't give his name, but I retired to Langless almost 20 years ago, and from the beginning of my time here, I was aware that the County Commission was looking at the best way to deal with the land at the south shore of Flores Lake. Money, time, studies, and no project has been feasible. Not even a pickleball court. I thought he was saying, court, you're a pickle barrel or pickleball or something when I was speed reading. Then he concludes, for heaven's sakes, vote to preserve this lovely landscape. I will cherish that forever. I want to, at the risk of seeming self-serving or even, I'm going to just ask if you indulge me to put up a picture of my family here. And the reason I'm doing this is during this time, if it'll work, this is the most sensitive mouth. My family was no more special than any other family during that time. My grandfather was born at Langless, up Flores Creek, very close to where the fabulous Bradbury Farm is, about a quarter mile, in 1889. My grandmother, Carrie, they had 12 children in 21 years. That was a little bit common in those days, but if I can, I'll just go through. Here is my grandmother, Ada, Edna, Hilda, Dora, Alma. Mary is still alive and bandaged. She's 93. Very proud to say. This is my grandfather, Howard, his oldest child daughter, Bev Clarno. And here's Bus. My Uncle Court, that was his namesake. My Uncle Jerry originated Jerry's jet boat trips. Now that company takes 40,000 people every year up Rogue River. Who am I forgetting? There's my dad. He's not very happy right there. And my Uncle Alden. My Uncle Alden was the only one of the 12 born in a hospital. All the other 11 were born at Agnes, in Langless at home. When Alden was born, my grandfather says to my grandma, Mom, dang it, that's 6 girls, 6 boys. We can call it quits now. We'll name this one Alden. So they named him Alden. So, my Uncle Jerry, my Uncle Court, my Uncle Alden, they discovered Rogue River. My father, the famous sheriff, tremendous dedicated law enforcement officer. After he retired, he and my mother, Merle, fell in love with Rogue River. And I'll tell you why I think this is good. These people, like I say, they were no different than any other family that time. Everything was to help their neighbors. Everything was to be for community. That's how we ended up at Boyce Cove Park. My grandfather used to give the Copes a bad time. We only had 7 kids in your family. We had 12, so it's something that he could brag about. This is my grandfather, county commissioner in 1939. 36. He served publicly for 16 years, meeting the governor on the ONC Timber Act and asking for the state's support. My dad, and here's the main photo I want to offer you. This is 100 years, 1881 to the 1981 Langlois Centennial. What I'm asking for is help for the 140-year celebration coming up in 2021. And if you agree, we could have 2 former Secretary of States as the Grand Marshals. By then, Bev Clarno will be retired. Bill Bradbury, I consider a good friend, and Bev Clarno, a Republican and a Democrat. I'm sure we can get them in the same car, and we'll have a parade in Langlois. Do I have anybody offering to help on that? Thank you. I knew Bob Morrow would raise his hand. So stay tuned, 2021. When it comes to the concern about what's going to happen at Flores Lake, I don't want to break some of the traditions that these families had during that time. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I do have that concern. I also want to, as I transition back into my chair there as a county commissioner, I want to offer, I'm going to get a little feisty today if someone suggests that any of our staff, and as I address the board, the other commissioners, that they may be ill-advised or that they may not be totally sold out to do the right thing for the citizens. That includes county council, our director of operations, everybody. I'm very protective of them because I see how they work and I see their dedication. So if any of the public testimony comes up and points fingers or makes negative assumptions, I'm just asking you not to do that. Not that I anticipate that, but it's just something that needs to be said. Thank you for that time. Did I stay under 3 minutes?
No.
No?
Not even close.
There's nothing new, Mr. Boyce. Again, I would ask you to please be brief. If you're going to come up and say exactly what the other people in the room have said, just maybe come up and acknowledge yourself as for or against. That would be wonderful. Tim Scullin.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm very appreciative of this chance to speak to you today. I'm very happy about the transient lodging tax passing, and I appreciate your comments, Mr. Chair, on keeping the formula the way it is. It's going to be a big thing for our fairgrounds and for our Sheriff's Department. I'm here today to speak about the Flores Lake land swap. I just feel very positive today, what with the TLT passing. I just hope that this momentum can carry us through into resolving this matter and passing the land swap as it has been established over the last 15 years. That's basically all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. David Barnes. Joe Reiber.
I'm Joe Reber from Langlois, the gentleman who wrote the pickleball court email to Court Voice. I have lived in Langlois for 20 years, retired here to come to the ocean. And I'm talking about access. You don't get to the ocean everywhere. Lots of private land. I go to the beach on at Bandon every Sunday to be by the ocean. But between Bandon and Langlois and then Cape Blanco, there's no real good place to get to ocean. You need a boat for New River. So I've been here for 20 years, and almost every year I hear you spending your time with new studies and with new town halls and with new consultants. And the state is willing, the county is willing. It is a place where not only people who retire here go, but I meet people from all over the country and all over the world enjoying Flores Lake. And I think it's a county treasure for all of the people living in Curry County. I hope you will stop this ongoing, let's examine it again process and make a decision for the conservation solution for Flores Lake. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicki Graham.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'll be brief. I've lived in Langlois and in Port Orford over the years, many years, and I just want to say that Flores Lake is one of our county's special places. It is time to move forward with a land swap with the state parks, and this will help preserve an inaccessible lakefront while also providing a benefit to the county of accessible property. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Garman,
I'd like to put myself in the back if I could.
if you could now speak, sir, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. I've got all these.
I understand, but you might not have heard from me at all. Hi, I'm Gary Garman. I'm a Flores Lake resident. I think that obviously the issues have been talked about at great length. I'm not going to get back into those issues. I just have one question, and that not necessarily a question, a comment, that the process, given the notice that was put out on the agenda, I've reviewed the statutes that are applicable. It looks to me like those statutes are broad enough to allow us to do whatever we'd like to do today with Flores Lake and the swap, wherever that may end up. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mary Wall.
Good morning, and thank you, Commissioners. I also won't use my full 3 minutes. I'm Mary Wall, and I'm from a ranch family in the Langlois area. My siblings and I are the 4th generation of our family to own and manage our 2 sheep ranches in the north end of the county. My family values and has used this area for a long time. Thank you for hearing this issue again. I urge you in the strongest terms possible to approve option A and move forward with this land swap. The community has, as you've heard, done this over and over again. They couldn't be clearer, I think, about the preference that the community has for recreation and conservation in the area. Importantly, the experts couldn't be clearer either. It's worth noting that every expert, consultant, land appraiser, and realtor who's looked at this area comes to the same conclusion. The best use is for conservation and recreation. It's not feasible to build roads, and the timber values are low. The social and economic values come from conserving the treasure we have and using it as it is for conservation and recreation. Please be the Board of Commissioners that moves this forward, brings a good outcome so we can all move on to other issues. The community wants this solution. It meets the identified county priorities, and it moves us forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Linda Tarr.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Linda Tarr. I live in Port Orford. I use this area often for recreation, for contemplation. It's very important in my quality of life. It feeds my work as an artist. I have participated in this process for years. Every time I come to one of these meetings, I'm not able to be at work. I have to take time away from what I do to earn a living to participate in the process. I'm glad to do so, but it is wasteful of my time, other citizens' time, and the county resources to continue to go back and back and back and ignore the experts and ignore the community and push this down the line. You guys have a chance to act as good stewards of our government's resources to go forward with this deal. It's an excellent opportunity for you to do what you say, which is that you believe in not being wasteful with government resources. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to go forward with option A. Thank you.
Thank you. Peg Rogan?
Reagan.
Reagan. So you know.
Good morning. Peg Reagan, Gold Beach. I'm here today to urge you to take action in support of the land swap option A. I don't know why staff didn't provide you and the public with the language that you requested at the last meeting in the agenda packet, but you have given the public ample time to comment on the issue. You can decide today. ORS 192.640, which talks about public notice required, in item 1, says that the notice shall also include a list of the principal subjects anticipated to be considered at the meeting, which you have. But this requirement shall not limit the ability of a governing body to consider additional subjects. I'm not talking about additional subjects, but I'm talking about additional language that you have the opportunity to approve today. I spoke to Chris Havel from State Parks this week. They need a resolution or something in writing from the board that you voted to support this trade, and only after they receive that and that the decision is officially made and they receive it, can they work with the county to finalize the language in an exchange agreement. What they provided to you, which is included in your agenda packet, is only a sample. It's an example of what an exchange agreement could look like. It is not, as I first thought, a draft for your decision today. It includes references, for example, that don't apply to Curry County. So it's just a sample. I also spoke to the Association of ONC Counties this week. A resolution is the appropriate document to use now. I recall some discussion that it was not. Rather, you should be considering an order instead. However, it was explained to me that an order is used only when you have the final language to approve. At that point, you can use either a resolution or an order to approve the exchange agreement. To facilitate action today, I suggest that you use the language in the recitals of the exchange agreement. If you turn to page 1 of that, A and B provide the legal description of the parcels as County Council advised, including. If we can accept that these descriptions are correct, fine. If not, they can be fine-tuned when the finalized exchange agreement is, when the exchange agreement is finalized. Item E contains the language that you'd need for an action today, with the exception of the final clause. So if you go to the last line of item E and replace that comma with a period and delete the rest, which does not apply today, then you've got a motion. So to repeat, an effective motion would include recitals A, B, and E with the last clause deleted. This language was included in the packet. It's how I found it. So the public has been more than amply provided notice. Again, I urge you to adopt a resolution in support of option A today. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Thode?
I'll pass. I'll second that.
I didn't think you could, Richard.
You
By
did
the
great.
way, to everyone in this room and that's maybe listening, Mr. Thode is part of our budget committee and volunteered his time for this county and did a tremendous job, sir. We appreciate your service.
Thank you. I'd just like to say it sounds like the support for this swap is there. I got in late on this discussion. It appears to me that would be beneficial to the folks in that area. But my concern really comes from the budget standpoint of this county has to come up with some solutions in the future. And I understand that selling this property development might not be an option, but I think we could look into possibly exchange for McVeigh State Park involved, or the second would expansion of the airport at Camp Blanco, which would provide some relief for the folks in that area. I'm not saying don't do the swap, but I think we need to look forward. If you look at Bandon Dunes Golf Course, and it's like 30 miles from Cape Blanco. I was at the airport in Crescent City Sunday. There were 35 cars there. 22 of them were from Oregon. So Contour Airlines is expanding to smaller communities. With that, I would just, no further comments.
Thank you, sir. And Shermer? Sorry.
Hi, my name is Ann Schmier. I'm from Port Orford. Thank you for allowing for comments today. In regards to the airport expansion, please be reminded that there is an active airport at North Bend, which is equally close to Bandon Dunes Golf Course. So expanding the airport at Cape Blanco is equidistance, and we should probably think about supporting the airports that we have already instead of expanding ones that are not particularly economically viable. I would just like to reinforce others' sentiments. I'm looking at this from a resource and budget item. This has been kicked around for so many years. There's been so much staff time, and we come back to the same conclusions year after year. Commissioner Boyce was at the most recent forum and saw the sentiments of the community, but I think this is a good decision for the entire county to put this to rest, do the swap, and move on to more pressing matters that our county needs to address. We keep coming to the same conclusion, study after study. I don't understand why you keep reopening issues that have apparently been resolved in past studies. So please vote for option 1, and thank you.
Thank you. Rich Volden?
I'm the 6th or 7th person to speak up here, and I've yet to hear anyone in opposition to the land swap. This issue's been going on now, I understand, since probably Alden Boyce was a boy. Not much of an exaggeration, for at least 10 years. I think it's time for you to act and do it today, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Velisis?
Good morning, Commissioners. Is this one on? Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Ann Velisis. I'm president of the Kalmiopsis Audubon Society. Our group has about 400 members from throughout the Curry County, and we've been engaged with issues pertaining to Flores Lake for at least 15 years. I urge you to move ahead today to advance the decision that you already made 2 weeks ago to proceed with option A. Hundreds of residents and taxpayers, including individuals from throughout Curry, have showed up at many county meetings, including the one in Langlois that some people have referenced that Commissioner Boyce attended. Dozens have sent letters. It's clear people care about the future of Flores Lake, and the proposed land swap has strong public support. Beyond the land swap, with Commissioner Boyce's leadership, State Parks has agreed to work on a trails plan and to collaborate on updating the State Parks master plan for Curry County with further investment likely to help support our growing tourism economy. Like a peach that's turning pink on the tree, this straightforward deal is ripe to pick now.
Could you say that again, Ann?
I said, like a peach that's turned pink on a tree, this straightforward deal is ripe now. By successfully completing this deal, you will build trust in Curry County's capacity to follow through, and you will build your relationship with State Parks. To instead shift gears at this point, to stop work on option A in order to work on an entirely different and uncertain deal with the McVeigh Rock parcel, risks losing all the effort invested so far and losing public trust in Curry County. We don't know a lot from the packet about this possible deal because there isn't much information in it, but we do know State Park staff has stated in the past that to consider the McVeigh parcel, it could take a lot of time and money because there would be so many steps involved. They've stated that they don't yet have the authority to make the offer or work on it. They'd have to go back to their commission, that they are prohibited by statute from trading oceanfront property, and that there would be no guarantee of success. We know, too, that when considering land swaps, the State Parks Commission must meet the criteria of providing an overwhelming benefit to the state parks system of Oregon. That's a very high standard that they must meet. So anyway, there may be some possibility to work out a deal there, but I think it's better to consider that phase 2 rather than to going back to the drawing board now. So in conclusion, I urge you to move ahead today with a small deal that I think would be a very big deal, to pick the right fruit, to accomplish something now, to be the board that finally gets this over the finish line successfully. Please make the motion and vote to proceed with option A today. Thank you.
Thank you. Roland Wills?
I'll be brief, promise. I want to represent the people that we visit, that we see when we're walking. Yeah, on Monday, we did the 8-mile walk around from airport to the lake and round. And as you do that, you meet people that are really enjoying the area. They're not here. They don't know this meeting's happening. They're visitors. And I just want to represent those people. That's basically it. Now, I'm a wildlife photographer. I'm Roland Willis from Port Orford. We visited for 8 years before we decided to live here. And we've lived here now 2.5 years. One of the reasons I live here is because I'm a wildlife photographer. I enjoy the wild aspect of things. One of the places we've visited now for 10 years is Flores Lake area. It's a huge resource for me as a nature photographer. I rely on it for, when there's nothing else happening, that is where I go and walk, quietly listening and watching. It's great. So basically, I just want you to do A, just simple as that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia Bott.
My name is Julia Bott, and I live in Harbor. And I am here to support option A. I think it's good for your constituents as well as good for tourism. The North County is a perfect day trip for people who live in Harbor. My husband and I come up about 6 times a year. We eat in a restaurant, we shop in a store or two, and we look for an easy hike. So I appreciate the options to have additional hikes. I really appreciate the request for the trails planned and the acceptance by state parks to move forward with that. I have worked in land conservation for many years before I retired, and I've seen a lot of places that were secured for public access and then took decades to open. So I'm really pleased to see that that is not the approach that's being taken here. This is a step in a relationship. I urge you to take it so that you can work to the bolder visions that you're talking about in other ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Morrow.
Good morning. Excuse me. Bob Morrow, Langlois. The county is running out of money, and one of the largest properties owned by the county is completely isolated with no access, no water, no perk, surrounded by swamp, at ground zero for a tsunami, with only scrub timber. Yet somehow you have a willing buyer for this, willing to pay fair market value for 90 acres right now. This should be a no-brainer deal. And the best part, if you can demonstrate to Oregon Parks an ability to work with them, they will include you in developing their master plan. This could yield additional or complete transfer of the remaining Flores Lake property. That is the immense value of a unanimous vote today. Last March, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department made a principled offer based on appraisals, which established that relative property values matched. You had a counter offer by Commissioner Boyce, gaining additional benefits for the county. And you have a letter from Oregon Parks accepting the counter offer. Offer, counter offer, acceptance. That should be a deal. Yet the challenges remain. To conserve in perpetuity the one-of-a-kind nature experience that is Flores Lake, something we all agree on, while monetizing the county's 500 acres for the benefit of all citizens of Curry County, something we all agree on. If it were easy, it would have been completed several decades ago when it was first discussed. If it were easy, 10 years ago, chasing big deals would have filled the county coffers. If it were easy, McVeigh Park would have been swapped 4 years ago. A lot of intelligent men and women on numerous commissions tried for the big deal. It is time to commit to a little deal, and that in fact would be the big deal. Please, start the dominoes falling with this 90-acre deal today. Oregon Parks is already aware of the next domino, the parcel listed in Alternative 2, considered suitable for a conservation easement. Close this first deal and use the second parcel as the centerpiece for continued discussions to acquire McVeigh Park. A second domino falls. Complete deals as part of Oregon Parks Master Plan, and you will be free of a completely isolated parcel with no access, no water, no perks, surrounded by swamp, at ground zero for a tsunami, with only scrub timber. You will have placed the land with a competent steward for future generations of citizens, and you will hold properties with a myriad of potential for generating income for Curry County. Commissioner Pash, vote yes, and you can be the first to step out of your car along Highway 101 and pound a for sale sign in at Port Orford Wayside, if Oregon Parks Commission approves the deal in September. Make this deal, and a check for $200,000 made out to the county is just down the road, while preserving a piece of what is special about Flores Lake, the very soul of Langlois. Return a unanimous vote today and demonstrate through your actions that you are a partner that Oregon Parks can work with. Thank you.
Trudy Spanier.
Hi, my name is Trudy Spanier. I'm a resident of Flores Lake, but I also am, I believe you haven't disbanded the real estate task force for Curry County. Several years ago, we met time after time after time, and we advised the county on what the five of us thought would happen to the surplus properties, and a lot of that has been done. This parcel, however, is such a gemstone along the whole coast, and let's not forget the fact that if indeed we do have a tsunami, that airport road with the airport being down there is one of the only places that those big supply airplanes are going to be able to get into for the whole coastline. All of the Coos Bay airports, all of those airports are going to be underwater. That airport is usable. The properties that you would achieve next to 101 could be a staging ground for all of those supplies coming in and rebuilding roads. You also have the niche there that we could be taking advantage of a county park along 101. Whereas at Flores Lake, we're not catching those that are going down 101 on their way to somewhere else. They just need a place for 1 to 2 days. Because we're on a reservation system, they can't get in. So they're going on down, and we're losing money to people like KOA. If Curry County had a park right there across from the high school, we could be getting those that are on their way somewhere else. But as it is, they're just coming down, turning around in the park, and leaving again. I hear it night after night. My bedroom's on the side of the road. So we could be getting more money out of county parks just by doing this deal. So I urge you, please, go ahead with this land swap, and then we'll work on the other 500 later. Thank you.
Thank you. Deanna McDemo. Deanna, I'm sorry. Well, yeah.
I just wanted to, good morning. 15 seconds are up. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the will of the people and that meeting at the Langlois Lions Club where we had over 100 people. And I know because we ran out of chairs. So if you consider that Langlois only has about 300, you could say that was 1/3 of the people, but really there's 700 that live over. I'm just saying you could say that. But what it is they were people of all political bents, all ages, all inclinations, and we had those, for those of you that may have not been there, we had these work tables, like maybe 15, and every one of them, and it was like, we didn't get a table with our friends, for example. They were mixed tables. Every one of them had, as number one, was conservation of Flores Lake parcel that you guys are talking about. So, that's all.
Thank you. Mark Furler.
I forgot to say I've lived here 48 years, which is important.
Yes.
Hi, Mark Furler, Gold Beach. Thanks for taking my comment. I'll make it very short. Please vote on this today, and please vote in favor of the land swap. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Colin.
Morning, Commissioners. Jim Colin, Curry County Assessor. This deal has been considered for the last 5-6 months or so, and back at that time I did send you an email expressing my concerns with the potential of the swap. I've listened to everybody that's come before me to speak this morning, and they all have, very good arguments. I agree, this piece of property is truly a gem that we're considering here today. If I might compare it to, say an ice cream cone. The county's got an ice cream cone up there that's 500 or 600 acres. The piece that the state wants, to me, is the ice cream. And the rest of it, the other 400 or 500 acres, is just the cone. And then you might say that maybe the state's our big brother and they just want the ice cream. And they want to make a trade for it. And I really think that in this trade, what they're looking to trade is more like a bucket of oatmeal. Really doesn't go with the ice cream cone. If we take the ice cream out of the cone, it makes the whole property less valuable to the county. I like the idea of keeping that property up there in its natural state. I just think that the state should be coming to us and offering to make a trade for the entire property, not just the ice cream. As far as I'm concerned, any property they may have to trade doesn't even need to be in Curry County. It could be a piece of forest land that is harvestable in any other location in the state. I think they've got more options than what they're offering us right now. I just really don't see, I've been around the county for a long time, I really don't see this county making any viable use out of the property that the state has offered for trade. And I heard it suggested that we might just sell the property. I think you all know that if we sell the property, the county will get 6 cents on the dollar in a situation like that. The rest of the money will go to the rest of the taxing districts, and that's not a bad thing. The 500 or 600 acres that we've got up there, we got that property because people didn't pay the taxes on it. It was foreclosed on. But I really think the county has the opportunity to make a better deal and put the county in a stronger position. If you do decide to move forward and strike this deal today, I've heard it said that the state originally wanted 70 acres, but the 70 acres didn't equal the value of the oatmeal out on highway. I don't think that's really all that important. I've seen land trades between public ownerships before, and the law says that the properties have to be approximately equal in value. I've seen trades where that approximately equal in value can have as much as a 30% difference in value. So I just don't think that, if you decide to make the trade, I don't think there's any need to add in the extra 20 acres and bring it up to 90. I hate to say it, I think you could take more time, have the state sharpen their pencil, and make you a better deal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pardon?
I'm ready whenever.
We're going to go through the consent agenda first, and then we'll move on. All right, so moving on to number 5, consent agenda, Board of Commissioners minutes from May 8th, 2019, Wally's House transfer agreement, promotion order for Cassandra Van in the District Attorney's Office, the CAFA, County Assessment Function Funding Assistant Grant from 2019-2020 application revisions, Curry Community Health Amendment 11 to Public Health, IGA Intergovernmental Agreement 154108, hire order for Waylon Summers, Crew Supervisor in Juvenile, and a hire order and job description of Nancy O'Dwyer as a Planner Community Development. I have a motion, please.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as written.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Moving on to number 6, public hearing, 11 a.m., order vacating alley right-of-way of Pacific City Subdivision. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are we
In
too
your
early?
materials is a...
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Go
12
ahead.
minutes?
It was not 11 o'clock yet?
It's not 11 o'clock yet, so we have to
Okay.
hold on this.
Thank you.
Do we?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to 7, and we will move 7C forward to Flores Lake potential land swap. Ms. Schmelzer. Thanks for that. Court.
Sure. Well, as you know, this was put on the agenda because the state parks wants direction on which way we're going to go. And there's been a lot of information floating around about the history of the property, the proposals. So I just want to clarify some of the information that's been out there. We have tried to keep the board apprised of everything that the state has been telling us. What we're looking at, this property, when people say we've been studying this for years, it really goes back to 2010, where we had a natural lands committee.
Excuse me, could we be quiet in the audience, please? Thank you. I'm sorry.
In 2010, we actually had a natural lands committee look at all of our properties to determine their value for resources. And after that, the property kind of sat, or I shouldn't say kind of, it did sit. Now, there were some private proposals in there to build or develop the property. That never happened. But when I was here in 2015, we actually put together a property task force to look at what to do with all of the counties. The May board action, May of 2016 board action, had a list of properties we needed to address, and then it said, and form a task force to look at the Brookings Airport, and to look closer at the Flores Lake property. So to say we've really been studying this for years and years really isn't accurate, to be honest with you. And the board had decided at that time that this was big enough, they wanted to deal with these smaller parcels and then come back and have a task force look at that. That hasn't happened yet. The public is kind of asking us to bypass that and go ahead with an option, with a sale. I do agree with the assessor in part. You know, if we sell off the lakeshore, what are we going to do with the rest of the property that we own out there? Are we going to be going through this same thing? What happens if somebody comes in to apply for a shooting range or a golf course on that remainder portion? We're going to have these exact same arguments. I do think we are better off when we swap with the state to swap the entire parcel rather than leave part of it unprotected. I think everybody wants to see the whole thing protected, so I think we need to look at that. After I was gone, and in about 2017-18, the planning director did start having discussions with Oregon State Parks, and that's when they started discussing the wayside, which has a lot of wetlands and is not suitable for a campground. That property, I've heard somebody say at a meeting, you know, the county could sell that, there's 2 home sites out there, look at the money they could make, this is a win-win. But the reality is that wayside is zoned for public facilities, it cannot be sold for home sites, and it also carries a deed restriction that it can only be used for recreational use. So really the wayside is, in my opinion, not of much value when we're looking at swapping. Now, Oregon State Parks has told us they are open to the discussions of McVeigh Park, swapping the Forest Lake property for McVeigh Park. They have not said no. They have not said yes. They've said we are open to it. They did say it's gonna take some issues. It's not out of the picture. It's just gonna be a little slower, that process, because we've got some shorefront and lot line issues we're gonna have to address. As somebody who has to look at, we have to look at the entire county. We just got out of budgets, as you heard the budget committee member express, that we need to look at everything. And when you look at McVeigh Park has a value right now of $2.5 million. And if the state is willing to work with us on swapping Flores Lake and keeping it preserved like everybody wants, plus giving us something that has a much higher value, of $2.5 million, and it hasn't been appraised. That's just the tax assessed. Very few wetlands, and something we can turn around and operate as a campground and make money on. I think the county would actually be doing a disservice to the residents to say, let's just take option A and walk away and not look at anything else on the table. I think we owe it to the citizens to say, how can we preserve the property plus make money on it and bring in find a source to bring in revenue so we can keep paying our bills and keep our doors open. This was asked to put back on the agenda for discussion. One of the discussion items, like I said, was the parks. The state parks has said they are open to these discussions about McVeigh. So that is my part of why this is on here. Council Huddle, I believe you also have something on the agenda because you were working on a draft agreement for consideration if the board just decided to say today, let's just swap a McVeigh Park for the Wayside. I think you have something to that effect.
Well, I was hoping to hear from the state parks representatives and ask them questions to clarify some of the points in the agreement, and that's what I was hoping to do today.
What, if you would please, sir, step up. And again, what I understand this to be is we're not making a final decision today. What we are doing is we're telling state parks the direction that this board would like to go.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I intend to make a motion today, and it's going to be lengthy and it's going to be detailed, so there's no misunderstanding of where we left on May 8th. So yes, I'm very interested to hear from Director Comfort as well, but I am going to be making a motion, so we appear to be a slight disagreement or maybe a major disagreement there. Thank you for letting me interject there.
Sir, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Comfort. I'm the Coastal Region Manager with Oregon State Parks, and this is my 30th year anniversary of working with OPRD. So I didn't prepare a statement, so I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, my first question, sir, would be, I've been in lengthy conversations with Jay Trost, who was the Parks Director in Curry County until about a year ago. And he said to me that a few years ago that the state did offer Curry County McVeigh Park. That you actually offered the park to the county, and the previous board, for one reason or another, did not address that. Is that true?
So the way it works is we can't offer properties outright without OPRD commission approval. But my task when I started 3 years ago as the region manager on the coast was to look at all the properties we have on the coast and identify areas where we might find efficiencies in delivery of service. So we serve the exact same public as your parks department. And so a lot of times the public doesn't care who has the patch on their shoulder. They want the service provided. And so as I'm looking at our ability to deliver service levels at the level we are right now with increase in personnel costs and those kinds of things, I'm looking for places where we would be able to transfer properties, keep them in public trust as a recreational property, but not necessarily show up to clean the bathrooms or take the garbage up. So when I got here, I identified McVeigh as a property that could fit that bill. The other thing, when I first started, it was back when you guys had the concert series out by Cape Blanco, and it was a big money driver, and the promoter was actually threatening to pull the plug and move it someplace else. And that was right when I was starting, and I met with Commissioner Smith at the time, and he wanted to know if we would provide some camping opportunities on the property adjacent to that concert, where we lease out some ag leases with a guy named Scott McKenzie. And so we'd been saying no for a long time, and I came in and was promoted up through because I have the ability to find ways to say yes where everybody wins. And in this case, I didn't see it as a big threat if we allowed, another 500 campers to camp there. Having said all that, what I was trying to do was I identified early that being so far down in the south end of Oregon, Corning, there's less opportunity for economic viability just because there's no arteries from the valley coming straight over here with population centers and things. And so I made it a special goal of myself to help increase economic drives down here in the county. And so if that meant that McVeigh was transferred over and could have a campground on it, and I walked it yesterday, and I think that you could put 10 camper cabins on it with ocean frontage and rent them out almost 90% capacity year round. So I look at the opportunities and develop them, and then I present them as staff to the commission, Parks Commission, to make an approval on those kinds of things. And so from the director directing me, she's asked me to actually look at efficiencies and where we can do that. So yes, we offered it to Jay 2 or 3 years ago, not as a complete offer, but just to start thinking about that kind of as an option. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And something I'd like to let everyone know in this audience is I am not against, just so you all know, I am not against doing a land swap for Lake Flores. I just want to make the best deal that I can for the county. I'm sorry to say, but where I was raised, business is business. Friendships are great and everything. We need to work together with the community, but business is business. And I personally, I just have some issues with the viability of the property we're being offered. So that's my comment on that.
So if I could add a few more thoughts. When we were approached for the full 500 acres or whatever that is down at Flores Lake, it doesn't fit into our portfolio of what we're looking at from a statewide land holding basis. When we saw that opportunity, we weren't ready to come for the full purchase price of that full property, but we did see an opportunity to lock down a natural resource with special views that fits right into our Parks mission statement of preserving and providing recreation opportunities for future generations. And so if we got that lakefront property, our intention wasn't to do development, maybe some very low-key paddling camp spots, but those have a lot of problems that are associated with it when you have that kind of thing going. And so we don't have necessarily the staff to support that. But we wanted to make sure that we were preserving that Flores Lake area for the view shed and the recreation forever. And so, and if it didn't work out, for me, it was, you guys would figure out what you want to do, but it wasn't going to be kind of our burden to carry. So we weren't doing it because we had a desire to do some money-making venture or anything like that. It was truly to preserve and protect that scenic value.
And I think everyone in this room has an equal opinion on that. We'd all like to see this park preserved, or that lake preserved in perpetuity. That's been what I've said since the very beginning. One more question I have, and that was when Mr. Havel was here, he mentioned that there might be some issues with transferring oceanfront land on McVeigh. In speaking with some people in our county, it seems like we could do a separate lot line adjustment or a separate lot onto that, and that could stay with parks so that there are no laws violated, and that could be done pretty easily. Would that be something that would be entertained through Parks Department as well?
Yeah, whatever's legal, I'm down with. So it's just one of those things where there's a lot of process that has to happen, and we have no legal authority to sell off state land that's the ocean shore. You know, that's a statute. And so, but the other side is that our position hasn't changed on the other acreage that's over at Flores Lake. So if you're thinking the McVeigh property's worth $2.5 million or whatever the tax assessment is, I still want to trade for that, but I'm happy to entertain the idea of transferring that property through a master plan process to see who the best operator of that is, whether it's a 25-year lease or something like that. The beauty is that once it's in your portfolio, then you can access pass-through grant dollars to develop it that State Parks offers, but isn't our money, it's federal dollars that pass through. And so a lot of times there's ways that we can increase our recreational opportunities with federal dollars that I can't touch as a parks guy, but you guys can. And so again, it's not about money and us holding expensive properties. It's about service delivery and what we do for the county down here in Economic Drive, plus the rest of the state of Oregon. And every decision we make has to include the thought process. It includes every Oregonian, not just the locals here, but for the betterment of all of Oregonians. And so as we do this, we have a master plan process. We'll have a meeting over in Hermiston or someplace out on the east side, one in Portland, one in Eugene, one locally here too. And that's just to gather information. Then we reboot and go back with draft plans. And so the process, if you want to wait for McVeigh, is a long process. It takes a lot of public input. It takes a lot of staff time to just do resource assessments and evaluations and then put together plans. So
Are we talking weeks, months, the long process?
Long process, 2 years just for the master plan to be completed, and then depending on how that looks, sometimes, you know, development out of a master plan can be 10 or 15 years, depending on what the goal is.
So how did this get expedited on Flores so quickly then? Because this hasn't really been in the mix until, from what I understand, not long.
So when I got here, I wanted to master plan all of Curry County for the economic side of things and to look at efficiencies. And so it's been on our books. It didn't get budgeted for last year, and thankfully so, because then this wouldn't have been included in that. But it's been 3 years in the plan so when we do master plans, we'll predict what our priorities are 4 or 5 years prior to it, so that we're in kind of the queue to get in. And so I've been pushing for a master plan in Curry County for 3 years. And it's at the top of my list for the coast.
Commissioner Gold?
I've got a couple of questions. The trails. I'm thinking in terms of ecotourism, and I think it could be a big boon up there. So could you give me an estimate on the amount of time it would take to get some trails in there at Flores Lake?
So I'm going to sell it long shot rather than give you
just an estimate.
5 years.
Okay. And if we were looking at getting McVeigh Park, I'm just supposing, we would have to have an appraisal, correct? Just like we did on the Flores Lake.
Not necessarily. So State Parks has a pretty good idea of what we're holding. And so if it's not a business transaction, but actually a property transfer or some sort of long-term lease, I don't think that those numbers come into play as much as if it was going to be site for site.
Okay, so considering that it's worth in the millions and our property's worth, what was it, not even 200,000, a swap, would that be possible? Just curious. Just throwing that out there.
I think, yeah, it would be possible. It would be an interesting dynamic to see the numbers not compare and call it a fair swap, but...
Okay, because there was a big concern about the equal monetary value previously. Okay, third question, lease. Do you do $1 a year leases?
I don't know. I've heard of those, but I can't speak directly to it.
The only reason I'm asking that question is if we were to do a lease and use that land to generate some income at McVeigh Park, that seems to be the concern here, using the land to generate income.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to get a really low lease?
I believe so.
What kind of promise?
None. No, so the way it works
squirmy government type.
Yeah, no, I'm not that squirmy, I promise. So we're working on a deal up at D River in Lincoln City. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that big parking lot. If you come in from the valley and land in Lincoln City, the first place you see the ocean is D River. And we just transferred that property over that's worth millions to the city of Lincoln City for nothing. 25-year lease. And so that language, I think that was in that document that you saw, may be from that swap. I've got another one working up at Tolovana, which is in Cannon Beach, which I would turn over oceanfront property to the city of Cannon Beach because it's going to be in recreation, in perpetuity for recreation. That's all I really care about, is whether the delivery of service is what it's designed for, and that's recreation. We're not a bunch of land barons that just want to make money and get a portfolio full of valuable property. We have the whole ocean shore right now. It's not about the money. It's about delivering wonderful service to the people of Oregon and our visitors.
Okay, and I've got one last question regarding zoning. Would it be possible to rezone that wayside property so that it would be more useful for the county?
So I believe, I haven't looked directly at it, but there was the deed restriction that it was for recreation purposes only. But I thought that deed restriction was lifted when we had a person named Cammie Bunis that was our property person that just left the agency. And I thought that she had worked through the process of relieving the recreation component of that. I think it still has to be in public use. And so one of the thoughts we were having was that it'd be a great place for a county sheriff's substation or something like that. So I don't think that it's a residential lots, but I think it has some potential for some other public use.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Carver's been great to get to know you and to see you here today and be available, certainly, for questions. You've been here for how long? We haven't talked Beaver baseball yet. But
Yeah, they're not doing so good.
yeah.
They're doing good, but not as good as we hoped to.
Not to our expectations. So, Mr. Chair, and stay there if you wouldn't mind, please, sir. We have an opportunity today to make a lot of people very happy, and I think that should make us happy. That on itself is not the reason to accept this land exchange that we, in my mind, approved on May 8th. But working with the state, as you know, Curry County doesn't have the greatest reputation for taking action, especially the last couple of years. Not to be negative, but I think we need to highlight the opportunity that we have here. In getting to know you and your staff, Mr. Chair, if you set up a meeting with me, Mr. Comfort, Casey Nielsen, Larry Becker, Director Schmelzer, Economic Coordinator Madison, put us in a room and start the process for moving forward on potential other opportunities. I would approach that with tremendous optimism and enthusiasm. So as we move forward here, yes, I am ready to make a motion, and I think it's very low risk in what we have. And the other thing I overlooked, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, the other aspect of involving ourselves closely with the state parks, I've been working a lot, as you know, behind the scenes with both the BLM, but especially the Forest Service, on similar opportunities that the county has. Been working very hard on this. And I'm going to, in our relationship, I'm going to be relying on you and your staff a little bit to help us with the federal government, bring everybody together. So when you offer a strategic plan for Curry County, you know we don't have the resources for it, but you have the expertise. That also motivates me tremendously. And so in that partnership with the federal government, I think, I don't want to overstate it, but I think we have some incredible opportunities here. I'm not all about just tourism and visitor promotion, but that's the thing we have here right now that we can best hang our hat on. I have quite a background in that, as you do, and so I'm as excited about McVeigh Park as anyone, but there's a lot of other things we haven't even looked at yet. It's just on the surface. So I look forward to that opportunity, and I hope that we can build that trust with you. I know we are, and if you want to comment any on that, I would appreciate it.
Yes, so the other thing that we haven't really touched on is the Oregon Coast Trail and the development of that and filling in the gaps, and that's an agency priority. It's a legislative priority as well. There was just a $1.2 million investment, the legislation allocated for us to help put in some infrastructure on the Oregon Coast Trail, and the South Coast is going to be a vital part of that. So we've established some pretty robust working teams to plan with that, and I see some of the trail system we're talking about over at this Flores Lake property as offshoots of that Oregon Coast Trail, and so there's a lot of different things that we can look at. And on my bulletin board at my office it says TTT, things take time, and everybody knows that all of this takes time, but a lot of times some of the best decisions are the ones that took the longest to grind through to get to the truth and the purity. And so I would encourage you to always use time when it's on your side. And but at some point time runs out, and I'm not saying that that's the case here, but it's close. I mean, we've been kicking this can around a little bit. The thing that you need to know is that with the county, when we do the master plan for the state park properties within the county, part of that plan is going to be that we're identifying other efficiencies. And so I'm going to be looking for public comment from all of you folks to help us understand where there's places that we don't need to operate a park location, but it stays in the public trust as a park location. I also want you to know that we don't want to lose our place down here in the county. We have been doing, we're coming up on our 100-year anniversary for state parks, and we've done a fantastic job. I think our approval rating's up in the 90s, and it continues to be so because we deliver great service and we really care about what we do. And so I don't want to lose the presence that Oregon State Parks has down in the county. So we don't want to wholesale clear out of here. We just want to find places that you guys can actually make some money at the same time that we are with our reservation campgrounds and some of our other gyms that we provide up Loeb and some of those places. So thank you.
I have one more question. And a statement before Mr. Boyce does anything further. You just mentioned that there could be a possibility of a lease term on McVeigh until we could look for possibly a land transfer on that property, a permanent land transfer of some kind and a master plan down the road. Could that lease plan be included into, because I wouldn't imagine that would take long to just go to the board and say, look, we're still going to hold the property, but we're going to lease it to Curry County for 20 years while we work on a transfer of that property. So could that be included in this deal?
In this deal, I don't think so, because that other part takes a lot longer. So there was a second paragraph that Chris sent, I believe, to one of you guys that talks about the process. And so essentially it would stop this process and then it would kick in some more time for us to do a bunch of the other stuff.
How long would a lease deal take? I mean, if it were just exclusive off to the side?
I don't think it would be much more than 6 months, actually, because of the process where we gather all the information and then present that as staff work to our commission to make their best judgment call off of what we provide.
And so it would be a real sweet deal, is what you're saying?
Well, that's an interesting term. It would be a good deal, I'm sure.
And this is what I want everyone in this room to understand is you can't blame me as a new commissioner coming in here, and I hope you don't, for trying to get the best deal for the county. And I know everybody wants me to just jump on board with this because this is what everyone wants in North County. But I have to, like Park said, they have to do what's best for every Oregonian. That's every decision they make. Forgive me for the marbles in my mouth. Every decision you make has to be for every Oregonian in the state. Every decision I feel this board makes has to be for every Oregonian that lives in Curry County. And I understand that this has been going on for a long time. You can't blame me for wanting to be the new commissioner sitting here and just getting handed this a few months ago to try and come up with the best business deal for this county that I can. I feel personally that this is being rushed, and I know you're all going to put your heads down and say, no, it's not, but for me it is. Because look what we've got done just in a couple of months. You know, I looked at Mr. Morrow, I talked to you several months ago about possibly bringing Jordan Cove and our corporation in to look at that. After looking at the overall of that, I looked and probably said that's not something I'd like to do. But now we've got Park sitting here talking about the possibility of a transfer or a lease with McVeigh that we could maybe get done in a few months while we look to transfer on a master plan a group of properties into Curry County and do a trade that would make sense for everyone and benefit everyone in this county. So I'm sorry if people feel like I'm against this. I'm not. I am for doing a trade with McVeigh or with Lake Flores if it's a fair deal for everyone in the county. And it seems like Parks is open to the suggestion that we may be able to look at a long-term lease while we have the possibility of moving forward with a land acquisition and a master plan. And that would be what I would hope is the good business sense thing to do for the county that would bring the most dollars into this county and preserve these parks in perpetuity as well. Commissioner Boyce, did you have something further?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Of all the information I've read, one of the most compelling documents that I felt responsible to read it more than once, and that 7-page program here by Ann Belisis, Trudy Spanier, Mary Wall, Chris Hawthorne, certainly Bob Morrow. None of them will take the credit. Who am I overlook? Oh, Gary also put a lot of time into this. And when you read it and then go back over it, it puts the county in a good position. And it gives the reasons why that this is a good deal for the citizens, a good deal for the Oregon citizens, and our county. So I'm gonna do everything I can to move forward on the McVeigh and other aspects, opportunities we have, and not pass up this opportunity here. I think we made the decision on May 8th. So yes, subject to your approval, Mr. Chair, I'm willing to make a motion.
Well, we are way over on time for JJ, so why don't we, if you prefer to make the motion now or come back after break?
I'm sorry, the public hearing's supposed to be at 11, so I got the, yes. So we're okay there. No, I'd like to make the motion now. We're 20 minutes over, you're saying?
Make your motion, sir.
Who's fast typing here? From the agreement, the department is the fee owner of real property in Curry County, Oregon, located at Highway 101 and Airport Road, referred to as a port of procedure for a state scenic corridor, and more particularly described as, and then it gives the property description. I'll spare everyone on that. Likewise, the county is the fee owner of real property in Curry County, Oregon, located on the south end of Flores Lake, and more particularly described as the property description. Former Commissioner Reagan referenced, I think the key word here is the parties have determined. And this is a very long sentence, about 6 lines.
Is this a motion though, sir?
Yes, it's a motion. I tried to give you some heads up, Mr. Chair, that it would be lengthy so there'd be no confusion on what our direction is, and to the staff. We need to establish a resolution, the process, and then go to an order. And I would assume that would be before June 5th, which was the original date. So this is a resolution, as I just defined there, to first identify the property descriptions, and go ahead.
Well, this looks like it's going to be lengthy, and I don't want to violate
one more small paragraph.
Okay, go ahead.
The parties have determined that an exchange of fee title interest in the department lands and fee title interest in 90 acres of county lands at the south end of Flores Lake and adjacent to department lands known as Flores Lake State Natural Area are of relatively equal value, and desire to exchange these respective property interests, whereby the department will acquire fee interest in that portion of county lands and county will acquire the department lands. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So what is your motion?
That we have that resolution to go back to the May 8th meeting, that we directed staff to come up with a resolution. So this is the basis for that, so we can approve that today, move forward towards an order. That gives the parks the direction they need to move forward.
Do I have a second?
Okay, so I want to make this clear. You're making a motion to accept option A of what was presented in the
Thank you,
packet?
Chair Commissioner Gold. Yes, I think that should be also included.
Okay, I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Roll.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
No.
Motion carried 2-1.
We're in recess for 15 minutes.
Thank you, Staff Jesuit.
And please, quiet down in the hallway, please. Thank you. Next up will be 7A, is the Emergency Ordinance Wolf Advisory Committee Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just brought back to you from direction from the last meeting, and we explored having a wolf advisory committee with Coos County. I think the state said we couldn't do that, so we have to form our own, and what this will do is this will establish our wolf advisory committee and the program that they will administer to allow people whose livestock is damaged by wolves to claim for compensation. And once we do this, then the committee will just kind of shore up our rules, and we can submit a request to the state for funding to compensate folks, and we have to commit 10%. And this is at board direction, so I don't have any other questions unless the board has any questions.
I have none.
So the county has to pay 10% of whatever the damages are?
We have a 10% match on the funds from the state on the wolf depredation.
Okay, but those funds would go to the ranchers,
Yes.
is that correct?
Commissioner Boyce?
Sad to hear that, because I've never read that, completely unaware, so thank you, Council Huddle. Clarify for me again where that money would come from for the county, just out of, what's your thoughts there?
You know, I think we'd get a recommendation from the committee of where it would come from, but in general, it would be general fund. So I don't, maybe there's, the livestock owners claiming damage have to submit an application to recover, but the fees, if we charge that, they just come from the board. The board would just set them aside. There'd be general fund. So really, it'd just come from wherever the board found the money. It's really a question for the finance director or county accountant.
Thank you again.
Could we set up some sort of administrative fee on these claims so that county's not?
No, because, well, maybe. So in other words, and maybe just funding the staff is 10% of the program. We have to fund 10% of the program. Whether that's the reimbursement part of it or the administrative part of it, I think those details have to get worked out with the state.
All right, so we have anything further?
Remind me again how many members that we would be required to have.
Oh, you need 2 from, I think, the ranching community, 2 from the wolf community, 1 commissioner, and then those 5 pick 2 more at large. So 5 are appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and then 2 are appointed by those 5. And what we're doing now is we're establishing the committee, and then once a committee gets established, then the board solicits applications and appoints the applications. I don't think we have any applicants to appoint. We're just setting up the, just setting up the framework to carry it all out.
I move that we make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we proceed with the Wolf Advisory Committee specific to Curry County. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
All right, next we're going to deal with 7B, ordinance amending Article 5, Division 1 of Parks Regulations.
Council, do we have to keep one of the doors open?
Unlocked.
Okay.
So noted.
Okay.
Josh Hopkins, Curry County Parks Director. So right now we had a board workshop on 5/8/19. There was a board consensus to adopt amendments to Article 5, Division 1, reference to park regulations, and that was recommended to be adopted as an emergency ordinance at the 5/22/19 business meeting. That's what's in front of everyone right now. If there's no further questions or comments on it, I suggest adoption.
Commissioner Gold.
I'm going to make the motion to adopt the emergency ordinance amending Article 5, Division 1 of Park Regulations.
Second.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to deal with 7E, reimbursement of litigation, legal fees, and state court costs. Commissioner Boyce.
Do you want to do D first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I skipped that. Yeah, I had it marked for the other one. Yes. We're going to deal with 7D, community development reorganization. Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, so I was asked to bring forward a org chart incorporating some of the other community development related departments into community development. So that's what I've done before you. I do have a revised one where it does show that there is a liaison assigned to the department and that they are right next door or equivalent to the community development director. Some of the benefits of this, of course, is having, one of the biggest benefits is having access to admin staff. So rather than each department need admin staff or have directors doing the admin work, they actually have access to admin staff. And they actually help pay for a percentage of the community development director's salary and pay for a portion of that admin staff.
Commissioner Gold.
How do the people who are being changed around in departments, have you talked to them about the process here, or everybody's in favor of it?
So the only one that I did not talk to was the county surveyor because he was leaving, but I did talk to his secretary. I did let all the departments know. I specifically did ask emergency management and code enforcement about whether they would find it advantageous to have access to clerical staff. And they did like the idea of having access to
Okay, so that's the big benefit to them. Yes. And then what's going to happen, correct me if I'm wrong, their budget is going to change a bit because part of their budget is going to go towards administrative fees, correct?
Right.
And they totally understood that.
They understand that a portion is going to have to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone I've spoken to about this was in favor of it as well.
Okay.
So I make a motion.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce.
The top there on the organizational chart probably should read Commissioner Liaison or Liaison Commissioner, either way. Also, one more quick note, Mr. Chair. On the Code Enforcement Division, I'm going to keep lobbying for an additional, even a half-time second Code Enforcement Officer as we move forward and we inventory so many aspects of things we need to overcome in the county. Building without permits, etc. And then I want to highlight, yes, having staff available to these department leaders will save us money.
And I will volunteer to be that liaison.
I am the liaison, sir.
Oh, you are?
Oh, yes.
I didn't know that.
Well, I'm surprised, but that's okay.
Actually, I used to be the liaison to code enforcement, but I guess I no longer am.
Plus, I'm saying because this is breaking up, I thought there would be a new liaison to it.
Well, I've been involved in, yeah, I'm not going to say anymore. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I do think that the board should come back and revisit their liaison list because Commissioner Gold, you are correct. You are currently the liaison to code enforcement. And Commissioner Boyce, you are to community development and
parks,
parks, building safety.
All but 2 of the 7?
Yeah. And then I know there was some discussion earlier about perhaps Commissioner Gold taking one of the responsibilities because to try and divvy up roles so they were more fair. So I think we should probably visit that again if you'd like.
Then I'll pull back from being liaison and let you two figure out which one would like to be liaison to this. I'll let you two worry about that, but let's move forward with a motion to accept the community development reorganization.
Did you already get a second?
I have not.
Okay, I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
7E, reimbursement of litigation, legal fees, and state court costs. Commissioner Boyce.
Well, it's all been said. I don't have much else to offer. I've donated close to, I don't know, 35, 40,000 back to the county through reduced salary, through, it's all in the documents, through travel that I felt like I had no option of ignoring. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
If you'll give me just a minute to get through this packet, I have not finished looking at all of it. I looked at some of it. So you're looking to only collect the $3,288 in legal fees?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Gold.
Looking at the thing that was put out by the court, it says no costs or fees should be awarded to either party, meaning the county or Mr. Boyce. So I'm against this proposition.
I have a speaker from David Barnes.
David Barnes. I thought this was all over with too. I thought this had gone away and we were moving forward.
I don't know how many hundreds of hours I spent on this matter last year. And like I said, I thought it was over with. As Commissioner Gold just pointed out, the court ruled on this already. I don't think it's right for you to overturn their decision or set aside their decision and go ahead and make an award on this matter. The courts already have decided, and I wish you would just let that stand. You know, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, our position was not to ask the judge for reimbursement.
Well, I just lost my page, and I had something I wanted to ask you on it, and I lost it. So let me go back and reopen it. There are several pages here on your packet that you put in. My question was on the last page of that, if I can get to it. I'm sorry, not the last page, it's the second last page. To the Curry County Budget Committee, Commissioner travel, personal travel by Court Boyce in 2017-18. This is not included in any of this then, correct?
Not in the 3,200 litigation fees and attorney fees. That is correct, Mr. Chair.
My question on this is that why has it taken so long to get this put in? Here we are almost to June. This was from last year, and I remember Steve Byerlin and Mr. Barnes helping with this. I remember them being at my table in my home, and conversations about this came up, and the legal expenses at that point were talked about, and I don't know why it took till May to get this put in. We did enact, I'm not sure, I think it was about 2 months ago, a new travel policy, which required a 30-day turn-in date for any bills or receipts that would be due from any trips that we took. And I would imagine that this would fall into those kind of a thing. So I guess it just concerns me that this was the timeliness of this, as well as the action on it from the court failing to award attorney's fees on this. And I know you stated that you didn't ask for attorney's fees, but a lot of times in litigation, judges will automatically award attorney's fees on things that they feel it's necessary. With that said, do I have a motion?
No, I would have to abstain from a vote anyway, Mr. Chair.
You would have to abstain from a vote, I think, if that were possible, if that were to happen. Counsel, fill me in on this so that I know where we stand on this legally. If two commissioners vote in the yes and one abstains, it would be a yes. If one commissioner votes yes, the other one votes no. Is that then a fail automatically?
It's a no pass, which would allow you to do it over again. It's technically not a no, but it's where you are done with it. It's just a no action where it just hangs there. But if there's not a motion, that's also no action.
So, Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Yes.
I just want the people to know that this was a horribly ill-advised litigation from the previous board. It's all in the documentation, and former Administrator Schroeder. So to think that after the judge ruled decisively that I was correct in my responsibilities for the citizens of this county, and there's no interest in proper reimbursement so that I can pay my legal fees. And to answer your question, you tell me why it's taken 6 or 7 months, Mr. Chair. We've been a little busy. So if I defer to the board and the integrity of this board to do the right thing, that's all I have. So my fees that I've contributed directly back to this county, I would guess, are over $40,000 now. Thank you.
Well,
no motion is understood. Thank you.
I'll make a motion for reimbursement of the fees. Have a second?
Council Huddle, would it be appropriate for me to second the motion even though I have no intention of voting? I think me voting would be improper. That's a tough one, I know.
It's not a vote, I think, and if you're not going to decide on the matter, so I don't know that a second would be against the ethics laws. Certainly, you're not allowed to vote in a matter that...
I'm not allowed to vote? That's not optional?
Well, excuse me, Mr. Commissioner Boyce. If you do vote, there could be an issue with the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. You have a... Let me take a look at Chapter 240.
That's okay. I believe you're doing good, and I appreciate it, and that's why I wanted to abstain. So, Mr. Chair, I will second the motion.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold?
No.
Vice Chair Boyce abstained?
Yes.
You know what, I guess you have to say abstain.
Abstain.
Okay. Chair Pash?
Abstain.
Motion is a...
Does not pass.
A no vote. I mean, not a no vote, but...
does not pass.
Pardon me?
It does not pass.
Okay. Done.
All right, at this time we'll have Director's Report. Ms. Schmelzer.
So I just want to let you know that update on the ballot initiatives, as you know, the TLT passed, and the advisory question on the marijuana initiative also passed. The one on the consumption tax did fail. So I will be working with Josephine County on some of the language that they were looking at and for the marijuana initiative, and see what they expect of us or what they expect of their partner counties on that initiative. We're still looking at the business license. We have the draft. Actually did find the Word version, which makes it easier that we can bring it back to, or bring it to the strategic plan. We do have it narrowed down to 2 firms that'll get an interview. We're actually working on technology on how to actually do those interviews based on the current setup that we have. It gets a little cumbersome when they're not face-to-face. Just another note that I am working on some of the properties. We've had some people ask for purchase some properties. We do have a couple of them here that I've been working on and working with the assessor's office on, and we'll probably bring those forward to you, I'm guessing either the next meeting or the meeting after.
Well, I'm noticing it's 3 minutes to our public hearing. Do we want to, I think let's wait for commissioner comments till after that so that we can have the public hearing on time. So ordered, Mr. Barnes, go ahead. Actually, in 2.5 minutes, I can give my comments. I basically am very happy with the TLT turnout this morning. Waking up to that was very good news. Again, like I said to the group that was here this morning, from my seat, I will promise the constituents of this county that every dime of that money that is spent, it will be well thought. It will not just be given to a particular group every year. I know the Fair Board gets it this year, and I hope we can continue to give to the Fair Board. The greatest part of it for me is giving it to the Sheriff's Department to help fund that department so that our sheriff and his people can continue to operate and grow and protect the citizens of this county. I'm so looking forward to the K-9 unit that's coming in here. I'm very, very happy and pleased with the Sheriff's Department in this county, and that our Budget Committee and these commissioners all agreed to fund his department for what he needs, and we will now look forward to provide revenues in the coming years to continue to fund that. On a side note, I will say again this morning, I want to say that I am not, I'll make it clear, I am not and never was against the land transfer of Flores Lake. I have always Ms. Valasis will tell you all. Since the beginning, I met her last year, long before I was elected, and I told her that I was absolutely for transferring that property and continuing it in perpetuity as a conservation or as a conserved piece of property. My problem with the deal today is I do not feel that the constituents of this county got a fair shake on their revenue that could be generated from a different deal. I think that the piece of land that we've got and the restrictions that are on it, it is basically a useless piece of property to this county. And other than cutting the timber off of it, we will never gain a value for it. So I think to possibly give away the use of McVeigh and including that into this deal, which was spoken about several years ago, was a bad decision, and that's just my opinion. And I'm not angry at our board for it. Business is business, and we've got to do what we all feel is the best thing. The other two commissioners here felt that it was the best decision, and I applaud them for their bravery, and I look forward to continuing working with both of them down the road and further decisions. It is now 11 o'clock, so I will stifle myself, and if we could call the public hearing, order vacating the alley right-of-way in Pacific City Subdivision. Council Huddle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of months ago, the Board of Commissioners received a petition from a landowner out in the Pacific City Flores Lake area to vacate an alley. The petition was reviewed by the board, who set today the date and time for a hearing. We've done the notice. The roadmaster had submitted a report saying that the alley was not needed for the county's purposes and therefore did not oppose the vacation. And this is the time for any interested persons who received the notice or otherwise to speak on the vacation, and so you can open the public hearing.
Public hearing is open. Is there anyone here to speak? Seeing no one, public comments are now closed. Council Huddle.
Then we would just entertain a motion to approve the vacation of the alley as presented in the staff materials.
Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Alley vacated. Carried unanimously.
This is written Halloween 1960.
Commissioner Boyce, your updates, please.
I was going to try and make a PERS report to the board today, and I just, I'm waiting for some information to come from Klamath County. All of their new employees, they put under a 401k plan. I've been working with those Associated Oregon counties on the board. This is a huge issue for all counties, but especially small counties, the PERS responsibility to all of our employees. So for right now, if the board has interest, you can go to PERSsolutions.org. That website is on here, and this is some good information, and I hope to be able to do a report next commissioner comment. So I'll pass. I think I got enough there. There's 3. Here you go. Got one for you. The only other thing I have today, Mr. Chair, is the Vietnam War Oregon Memorial. We have collected $1,000 so far, and I've been sitting on those checks. One from you, one from me, one from Curry Community Health, or I have a pledge from them, and one that was given anonymous, but he was in the room here a minute ago. So I don't mean to not progress on that, but I want the public to know that that is, if you have been to the Capitol, and I can put up a picture later on, or next meeting, the World War II Memorial at the west end of the Capitol lawn landscaped area is just incredible, and that's the location for the Vietnam War Memorial to go to represent Oregon fallen Vietnam veteran heroes. So yeah, we'd like to keep raising money and send that in, and maybe I'll get a little more definitive information next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gold?
I just wanted to report on a training that I've been involved in down with the Brookings Harbor School Board, and we've gone through extensive trainings from OSBA, and we were able to use that training to come up with a $5,000 scholarship for students there in the district. And as a team, we established the priorities of student success, high quality staff, and increasing positive relationships. And we're going to hold the system accountable and the priorities showing in our budget. And going forward, the board will continue to collaborate with staff and community to monitor progress towards the district's priorities. And to me, it was a very positive experience. We had a lot of staff involved, not just the school board, and there was a lot of open discussion as to what could we do to improve the district, to improve positive relationships between staff and administration. So I thought it was a good thing. So we're moving forward, and June 12th, we're going to be having all of the superintendents of schools here, along with SWAC, to talk about collaboration within the county to positively affect our schools, because I sincerely feel that if we have good health care, good schools, and housing here in Curry County, our economic development will improve. Thank you.
All right, at this time we are going to enter into executive session. So we're going to need to ask the public to leave this room. We're going to turn down the speakers in the hallway, and JJ, if you would get us the new chip. We will be coming back into session after we come out of executive session briefly. So at this time we're going to recess this meeting. Coming out of executive session, staff is to proceed as directed. Is there anything further?
Nope.
This meeting's adjourned.